had a number of transformational moments, and they gravitate really around loss and grief. The first was losing my beautiful and talented mom, Maureen Little Mo Conley Brinker, when I was 12. That was a really heartbreak for our entire family. It was like a vacuum cleaner came out of the heavenlies and just sucked the joy out of our home, because she was really the rock of our home, as moms are. I had a great dad who I adored. Mom, though, kept the sparkle going, and losing her at 12 was really hard and left a hole in my heart that no EKG will ever detect. Loss is a hard thing, and grief comes in all shapes and sizes, for sure. For me, the first and most important thing was my faith. I had a rock-solid faith in God on my second great loss, which was my beloved husband. When Mom passed away, I didn't have that faith, and I was really seeking to understand God, because I thought he was angry at me. I thought I had done something so wrong, so bad, so unforgiving, that I was incurring the wrath of a very angry God. But then when I found in the person of Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, that created a faith in me that I knew that God had my back and that he had my total interest at heart. So first and foremost was my faith and trusting God. And really my life is all about trusting God. But the second thing I would say to people, and this is really important, and I address it whenever I talk about grief, is to put grief into action. As we know, we cannot stay in neutral. Life beckons us on. Now, when we have a seismic catastrophe, like a loss, or a prodigal child, or maybe a devastating life-altering situation, we have to pause, we have to catch our breath, we have to pivot just for a moment and just kind of take it in and deal with that loss. But then life beckons us forward, so we need to move forward. And I would say it's important to put your grief into action. In other words, be other-focused, not self-focused, and do something for others. And I have found that grief is not a new emotion, nor is activism a new phenomenon. But when you marry the two, great healing takes place. Well, when Bob got the news about his cancer, he had a very rare cancer, and it was really a childhood cancer that he never had when he was a little boy, and it just raised its ugly head when he was in his mid-50s, which was so unusual. But it took a few weeks to really diagnose what it was because it was so rare. And when we finally found out what it was, for us, again, this is our experience, Bob said to me, and we called each other not by our first names. He called me Sweetie Pie, and I called him Beloved. So he said, Sweetie Pie, when we found out we were given 3 months to live, Bob was given a prognosis of 3 months when we found out what this rare cancer was. And he turned to me as we were walking out of the oncologist's office, and he said, Sweetie Pie, I don't know if I have 3 months, I don't know if I have 3 years, I don't know if I have 30 years, but what we're gonna do from this day forward, we're gonna choose joy and we're gonna give the glory to God. And that's what we did. And people watched, because it's interesting, I think when you're singing from the mountaintops, people are watching. But when you are in that dark desert experience, people are watching how you respond. And people were taken, almost mesmerized by the way we responded. Now, we weren't joyful about this prognosis. We had a little 6-year-old boy. We were about to adopt a little girl. And all that kind of changed from our little adoption standpoint. So it wasn't something we'd have chosen. But because we had the faith in God, and we knew that God had our best interest at heart and that he could be trusted, then we wanted to be ambassadors of faith for him. And that's what we did. And people watched, and people were changed because they saw how we gave the glory to God. Now, for some people, faith might not be where they are, but I would say trusting God is a great solution, because it's hard to go at it alone. And what we don't want to do is for people to be isolated. What happens a lot of times when people are in dark places, they isolate themselves, and it will not go well for you if you isolate yourselves. Community is so important. And so it's very important for people when they have whatever it is, whether it is a prognosis that's grim, or whether it's just the grind of daily living, the disappointments, the discouragements, the detours that we have in daily living. It's so important to have a community of people that can undergird you and pick you up and usher in hope. For us, it was the Lord, but we also had great community. But it's important for anybody to have a community of people to surround them and be a part of their lives when they go through these type of times. Because people, Tom, they want to help. They want to reach out. And one of my dearest friends is here tonight, and her sister Luann had breast cancer. And the only way that Luann got through her nausea with breast cancer was drinking this drink called Big Red. You might remember that Big Red was a big soda pop way back when. So that precious friend of mine, Connie, every time that Bob went in for really massively toxic chemo and he had nausea, I would find on my white bench and my front porch a whole 6-pack of Big Red, because Connie just thought that might help Bob's nausea. You see, it's a community that undergirded us, and that's encouraging. So Tom, yes, because people want to help. They want to reach out. They want to do things for you, because we all want to give back, because people do it for us. So it's just a natural reaction that we want to help other people. Thank y'all for coming. I love libraries. I love bookstores. I could get lost in them. And I've spent a lot of time in my years at libraries. And just to Tom and Karen, your library is fabulous. And thank you. How perfect to be here tonight to share with you some thoughts that I have as I've just finished a book, my second book. I wrote a book a number of years ago on my mom called Little Mo's Legacy, A Mother's Lessons, A Daughter's Story. But the one I've just finished is more about what we're going to talk about tonight. So Karen, Tom, thank you. And Tom, it's so good to see that the years have been good to you. Thank you. Oh, you have. Well, bless you. Thank you.
One more thing I want to say. Every penny of every dollar she sells goes to wipe out kids' cancer.
Oh. Yes. Well, what Tom is saying, that's so sweet. Thank you, Tom. This book, Restored, Reconnecting Life's Broken Pieces. Thank you, Tom, for mentioning that. All net proceeds do go to Wipe Out Kids Cancer and the Maureen Conley Brinker Tennis Foundation. So that way, it's the first fruits I just offered to God is just because I have a real heart for people sometimes a real heart for people who are in fragile places. And that's what the book is about. We'll talk about some principles in what I address that you'll find in the book, Restored, Reconnecting Life's Broken Pieces. But it's my honor to give back and to have the net proceeds go to kids with cancer and then Mom's wonderful foundation. Well, tonight, thank you so much, each one of you, for being here. I've seen friends I haven't seen in a long time, and I'm meeting some new friends. So thank you so much. Dallas is home here, and now Alan is a new part of my heart. Well, are you singing from the mountaintops? Is life really, really good right now? Is it great? Well, that is awesome, and I rejoice. But it has been said, at some point in your life, you will experience crisis. And it's also been said that people are either leaving a crisis, about to enter a crisis, or they're in the middle of a crisis. You see, my dear friends, suffering is a universal experience. And no one is immune from the bumps and bruises of daily living. Yes, suffering is painful, but it's what we all experience. And the Bible says something about it. The Bible warns us about this. It says, "Dear friends, do not be surprised by the painful trial you are experiencing and suffering, as though something strange were happening to you. You see, this fiery ordeal is predicted. You won't go looking for trouble, but it'll sure come looking for you." And misery is as much a part of life, dear ones, as joy. But suffering doesn't have to just be painful and losing a loved one or having a prodigal child or perhaps having a devastating, life-altering circumstance. No. Just the daily grind, the bumps and bruises, the disappointments, the detours, the just the discontent sometimes of living in a world that's hard, because life is hard. And sometimes it's just really hard to take the first step when life weighs so much. But then, once you quiet your heart and you get settled, what's important is to focus on what God has done for you in the past and trust his consistent goodness to do it again and again and again. You only have to look at your past history to see how God has rescued you, carried you, even saved you from peril. And he'll continue to do that until you breathe your last breath. You know, how many times have you survived a car accident? Or maybe you've thwarted what could have been a dangerous outcome, or maybe a split delay could have saved your life. Well, or maybe just the fact that you're standing, just the fact that you're standing is an attribute to a God who has outrageously loved you and taken care of you. So don't forget to remember, my friends, how God has either physically, mentally, or spiritually pulled you out what could have been your wreckage, or maybe it still is now your wreckage. God's goal for you is total restoration. And that word restoration is rooted in the definition, and it means the ideas of return, of renewal, and of repair. God gives us a battle cry in his words. He's in his word. He says, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you always." You see, when chaos is coming at you like a freight train, don't crawl into a hole, don't retreat, or don't fake happiness. No, that's not what God wants. Stand your ground. Do not be shaken. You see, God instructs you to persevere. Life is hard. Oh, it's hard. But God calls you to be his warrior. He does not expect you to back down or in fear or hopelessness. No. He commands you to move forward, and he says he will be with you every step of the way, never forsaking nor forgetting you. You see, God deserves your full attention. Throughout the Bible, God is very consistent with one repetitive message. Nothing can separate you from his love. He is to be trusted. And God is the only one with the full perspective on any situation. That's why he commands you to persevere. He is power in your time of weakness. Our brokenness provides the ideal backdrop of the display of divine power. Just because something looks bad to you doesn't mean it looks bad to God. Or things that look good to you could actually look bad to God. You see, God is at work, orchestrating a good plan and a purpose for you, even when you can't see it right now. And I've found that trials can be treasures in disguise. I'd like to read a passage from my book, Restored: Reconnecting Life's Broken Pieces. It says, "Suffering is no respecter of ethnicity, age, socioeconomic status, or profession. It's an equal opportunity invader." We also see that trials have an upside. We know many times the greatest breakthroughs sprout from torched lives. Many blessings are only received from the residue of pain, and the path of suffering is the only way to obtain them, those blessings. When you persevere through trials, a few things happen. Strength and courage replace weakness and complacency. Confidence is regained. Recklessness becomes responsibility. Self-absorption dies to servant leadership. Perversity gives way to discipline. Relationships are reconciled. Love and compassion breaks through the barriers of hate and intolerance. True, authentic intimacy with God is experienced, and hope is restored. Trials force you to break through your fears, anxieties, and doubts, and stand strong, confident, and empowered. Your arrogance implodes as you are stripped of everything, and a sweet humility emerges in its place. As English writer, journalist, philosopher, and art critic G.K. Chesterton said, quote,
One sees great things from the valley, only small things from the peak. Yes, my friends, persevere. My son William shared a beautiful definition of joy. It's my favorite definition. And he said, joy is the cheerful confidence in God's power to deliver. Do you believe that? Do you believe that God delivers? I do. And trusting in that truth gives us the peace, the confidence, and the comfort to move forward, even when our circumstances seem to betray us. And not just move forward. No, not just move forward with unbridled joy. Joy is what puts the laughter back in your soul and the confidence in your heart. Joy propels you forward. Joy enables you to imagine, to create, and to believe. It's what creates and causes you to be continually grateful for all that God has done for you. Now, we don't jump for joy when natural disasters or pandemics like COVID announce themselves with such massive devastation, or when loss or death claims the life of loved ones, or when man's inhumanity to man is revealed. Oh, those are dark days. They're dark days. Pain will always be a part of life's experience because you and I live in a fallen world. And again, suffering is a universal experience that we will all have. Yes, it's sometimes really hard to be joyful when life is just hitting you with 2x4s. But God calls you to be joyful always, pray continually, and give thanks in all circumstances. That can seem a little extreme when your life seems to be careening out of control. However, in the midst of such chaos and suffering, joy can be planted to bear fruit. But that is only possible if you have the belief, the conviction, and the confidence that God delivers and always wins. However, our circumstances can just get in the way and create doubt and despair. I saw a comic strip one time that just really tickled me because of the depth of its message. The first little frame was an egg, and the second frame was a little crack in the egg. The third frame was a little chick peering out of the egg. The fourth frame, that little chick looked to the left. The fifth frame, that little chick looked to the right. The sixth frame, that little chick looked right ahead. And the last frame, that little chick was pulling that eggshell back over his head. I mean, isn't that what happens? We look at our circumstances and we want to retreat because our joy is robbed. Well, little chick, you look to the left. And little chick, you look to the right. And little chick, you looked ahead. But little chick, you didn't look up. Little chick, you didn't look up. You see, when we look directly at our circumstances, we can become discouraged. However, there are so many joy killers that just implode that sparkle that makes your soul soar. And I identified in my book 5 major joy killers. Now, there are many, but I saw 5 that really seem to just create implosion when things don't go well, or when we focus on them, things do not go well for us. One is comparison to others. One is worry. One is discouragement. And one is past bad experiences. That's 4. But the 5th is the lethal weapon that's used to be the biggest, in my opinion, joy killer. And that is fear. Oh, the power of fear. As you saw my mom's, that video, and Aaron, that was spectacular. I've seen a lot of videos on Mom, and that was great. It caught her sparkle. But Mom told me once that when she went on the tennis court to play a match, she went with either one of 2 approaches. She either went to play tennis, a big match, wanting to win or fearing to lose. Wanting to win or fearing to lose. And both approaches were aimed at victory. But the problem is, if you fear to lose, it's a self-fulfilled prophecy, because fear just paralyzes you. You can't hit the big shots when you are fearful. Your confidence implodes and your performance is limited. But when you go and you play to win, Oh my goodness, your confidence soars. You get out and you hit the big shots under pressure, and you move forward with boldness. Oh, my friends, don't fear to lose. Go to win every time. You see, the question is, after getting life settled after a crisis, do you choose joy or do you choose fear, bitterness, or anger? You know, bitterness is like a cancer. It just seeks to destroy its host. And bitterness can produce envy and hatred and arrogance and other attributes that are harmful to those around us. Conversely, joy produces peace and contentment and confidence that radiate from within and are a great source of stability, hope, and healing. When life seems to be delivering either blessings or crushing blows, our joy is not to be tethered to circumstances, which are very fleeting, or to happiness, which is emotion that's very temporary. But rather, we are to be tethered to the unshakable truth that God has a plan that will be good for you and give you hope. Trust God with the outcome. You know, God is the giver of hope. And what is hope? Hope is the very source of joy. Without hope, joy just doesn't prosper. It just can't. Without hope, joy cannot thrive within you. So to be filled with hope, to be filled with joy is to have hope. And hope is the powerful action word. It's a word that demands action. It is what restores joy when life throws us curveballs. Hope is what ignites our faith when our brokenness seems too difficult to endure, or that prognosis is too grim to grasp, and when our suffering just seems too painful to withstand. Hope is what rescues us when our world is rocked to the core and when our life is stuck on hold. It's at the crossroads, that fragile, fragile fork in the road, where faith and disbelief intersect. And that's when hope steps in by trusting God. A number of years ago, in 1985 to be exact, there was a tragic story on the front page of the Dallas Morning News. I still have the article. I was so moved by it. It was a story about the Bolden family, Ed and Lori Bolden, and their son, Alan. Alan was a great swimmer, had just graduated from high school, and he was about to enter college that fall after his summer at TCU, and he was going to swim. As a matter of fact, some thought he might be an Olympic hopeful. And that summer, before he entered TCU, he lifeguarded at a local pool. And as the Boldens did, Father Ed and Mother Lori, every night they put the light on for Alan when he came home because his nights were late in his lifeguarding job. And one morning, they woke up. The light was still on, and his bed was unmade. And 3 agonizing days later, Alan's body was pulled out of a pool in a lake in far northeast Fort Worth. He had been robbed for money, and he had been murdered. And here is what Alan Bolden had to say. With the media just looking at him and following his every move, here is what Alan Bolden had to say. Pain is mandatory. Suffering is optional. I want to say that again. Pain is mandatory, but suffering was optional. Because what Alan Bolden was saying, grief. This is such the grief of the unexpected. It's what I call the grief of the unexpected. Oh, yes. Grief comes in all shapes and sizes. And Mr. Bolden was acknowledging that grief is just part of our response to life's painful episodes. But what Mr. Bolden was saying is how we respond to that grief will dictate whether we live victoriously or whether we remain in despair and whether we remain defeated. You see, what Mr. Bolden was saying is that many times you cannot control your circumstances, but you can control your responses to your circumstances. You can choose joy. But my friends, joy is an intentional choice. Even if a new normal and the grief of the unexpected just takes you to the end of yourself, you can choose joy. You see, grief is real because life is hard. But life does beckon us to move forward. We can't stay in neutral forever. But what I have found is that for healing to take place, It's putting grief into action. And I'd like to read one more excerpt from my book about putting grief into action. Grief needs a time of quiet recovery, a time to breathe and regather what has been lost, to mend the frayed emotions and to rest the weary soul. Hardships can just wreck your mind, body, and soul, so the healing time needs to be properly applied. At the proper time, reaching out to others is a way to begin the healing process. It has been said that grief is not a new emotion, nor is activism a new phenomenon. But the merging of these two powerful forces begins the road to recovery. This action of being other-focused rather than self-focused ignites the healing process. The tragedy must be faced. To hide behind closed doors, retreat in isolation, or seek other unhealthy means to deflect it will further the depression and devastation. You must not live in your sorrow. You can't be held hostage to it. You must not carry around a deadened, anesthetized soul or become an emotional recluse, being immersed in it. You do not want your grief to define you. That will destroy you eventually. There is a constructive and healthy way to grieve, and it is to turn your grief outward, not inward, and reach out to help others. Volunteer for a charity. Get involved in a nonprofit organization like the Allen Public Library that is of interest to you personally and that can use your skills for its betterment. Champion a cause. Take up a hobby. Be invigorated through the joy of serving others is powerful and can lift you out of the abyss of self-pity, sadness, and hopelessness. Loving selflessly, even during a time of great personal pain, is a sure way to expedite the healing process. And I also want to stress that we cannot live in isolations. Dear friend, it will not go well for us if we isolate ourselves. As a matter of fact, we need to belong somewhere. As people, we need to belong to somewhere, someone, or to something, or to a group. You see, it's called community. And hope is ushered in through community, and community is a trusted group of people who will undergird you in times of sadness. Community is essential to moving forward in victory. But this is really where my story began. You see, when I was 12 years old, I was seated on a very uncomfortable pew in a church next to my 10-year-old sister and my 38-year-old dad. We had just buried my mom. And I was so frustrated and angry, and I was so heartbroken because I thought that I had done something so wrong, so unforgiving, so bad that I was incurring the wrath of an angry God. Really, I thought God hated me. You see, that's where I parked my 12-year-old heart. I really thought that I had done something so wrong that I was incurring the wrath of God. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt that God was inconsistent? Or maybe that he was just inactive. He didn't care about you. I mean, he just left you long ago. Or worse yet, have you ever felt that God was indifferent? He didn't hear your prayers, much less answer them. Well, that's where I parked my 12-year-old heart. And my grief was shared, our family's grief was shared not only by us, because even though Mom was known as Mom to me, she was known to her adoring public as Little Mo. And she literally, when she passed away, everybody mourned internationally. So our grief just became even greater because the world was mourning with us. Has anything like that ever happened to you? It's the grief of the unexpected. Has it ever just come barreling in like a freight train and just flattened you? Well, that's where I was. I had a hole in my heart that no EKG would ever detect. It was a dark time. But there, while I was sitting on the pew, I did think that somehow, some way, in some future day, that I wanted to fight that disease that scourge of a disease that had taken my mom's life. And that was a promise I made to myself at age 12. But life beckons on. I graduated from high school with Tom and Dick Teo and friends here, and I went on to college. And I came back to Dallas, and I started my job. I had a great job in public relations, and I wanted to make good on that promise, and I did. I was working in a country club, and I just started some fun things, some fun weekend activities for our members of the club, because it was a country club, an equestrian center, and we had all kinds of fun activities like a horse show and a tennis tournament. And we raised some good money that first year. We expected to raise $2,000. We raised $6,000. And the members loved it so much because they became invested that the next year, we were expecting to raise $6,000. We raised $15,000. The next year, the members caught on. They caught the vision, and a movement was started. And in 1980, until today, 44 years later, Wipe Out Kids Cancer has been helping children with pediatric cancer. We've raised over $30 million, and it's very exciting. But what we've done is we've given hope, and thank you, we've given hope and support and comfort to these brilliantly courageous heroes, the young heroes, and their resilient parents. You see, I was dealing with my loss constructively rather than being immersed in it or being victimized by it. And that's what we need to do, is be other-focused and not self-focused. I was putting my grief into action through Wipe Out Kids Cancer, knowing that I was helping others through my sorrow and grief. And that was so healing to me. Now, 44 years later, Wipe Out Kids Cancer is a significant part in the pediatric space. And many in this room have been very instrumental in being a part of Wipe Out Kids Cancer and furthering our mission. And I'm so profoundly grateful for what people do to help kids with cancer. So you might ask, is it too late to be used by God? Is it too late for my life to be used by God? Never, never. Our lives are messy because we are all broken people. We are. And we do and say things that hurt other people. We do and say things we shouldn't. And the people we hurt sometimes are the closest people in our lives. And sometimes we even do things that are unacceptable by the law, and we're punished for that. But God uses our heartaches, our hang-ups, and our hardships as a platform to encourage and bless others for a greater good that's much bigger than you. It reminds me of a story. A mom was calling to her son because he was going to be late for school. And she called in, honey, get up. You're going to be late for school. And her son called back, Mom, I don't want to go to school. The students don't like me. The teachers don't like me. Give me 3 reasons why I should go to school. And the mother said, okay. The first reason, I'm your mom and I said so. That's an important reason. The second reason is you're 38, and the third reason is you're principal of the school. You see, isn't that the way you feel sometimes? You just feel defeated, and you feel like you're no use to anyone, and that God can't even use you. Your past might haunt you. Your present time might exhaust. Your past might haunt you. Your present time might exhaust you, and your future might scare you. Perhaps your story is fragile, broken, and flawed, but God is calling you to embrace that story that He has given you and to persevere. It doesn't matter how old you are, you can change the world now. Dear brothers and sisters, you have a job to do, plans to keep, tasks to fulfill. God, the creator of all things, has an individual assignment, an anointed story just for you to tell in this crazy, hard, and broken, messy thing called life. Your unique and distinct future and the way you are wired with your many gifts and talents has an amazing purpose to fulfill. God has a sovereign plan for your life that is good and will lead those who are watching you to hope and redemption. He doesn't want you to insulate. No. He wants you to infiltrate. He wants you to go out there and speak and tell the world that you persevered. God wants you to share your stories with others about the way he has used you and all the beautiful and maybe not so beautiful things that are components of your life, and how he has helped mature you, grow you, and redeem you. Share your wounds with others. You see, that leads me to the last half of my story. When I came back to Dallas, I was going and blowing in Dallas. Had a great job, was involved in many things, and then all of a sudden, this handsome man walked into my life and captured my heart, Bob Simmons. And we got married a few years later, and we were both enjoying so many exciting things. We had great careers, we had great friends, we were on lots of invitation lists, we were working in ministry, we were living large. And we had a little 6-year-old boy, William, and we're about to adopt a little girl. And then life hit again with 4 horrifying and terrifying words. Bob, you have cancer. And 3 years later, with my 9-year-old William by my side, we buried Bob. But this time it was different. This time I knew that God. This time I knew that God loved me. He didn't hate me. He wasn't angry at me. This time I knew that because of his unwavering love and outrageous grace, that I could choose joy, even though now, with Bob's passing, that hole in my heart that I had when my mom was 12 had just expanded and got bigger. But this time I could choose joy, even though my heart was broken. And what had happened a number of years before, I met a daughter of a pastor. And she told me how much God loved me with this outrageous grace of his, and that I couldn't do anything to earn God's love. And there was nothing I could do, whether I performed well or whether I performed poorly. None of my performance could he condemn. He would never condemn me. He wasn't punishing me. I was not his direct hit. And furthermore, she said that God has sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die for my sins so I could spend eternity in heaven with him. So I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior and never looked back. What a game changer. That is my story. And the peace from that moment forward, was so real when I put my trust in God and my faith in Jesus. You know, friends, life still throws me curveballs. And loved ones that I treasure have died. And I will still have failures. I will, yes. But I know that God has my back, and his love endures forever. And I will persevere, and I will choose joy no matter the circumstances, and I will share my story and show my wounds to anyone who will listen. And that's why I wrote this book, Restored, Reconnecting Life's Broken Pieces. Because my hope is that I can help move people forward in victory if they're in fragile places. And that somehow the readers, once they read, will be infused with hope and joy and perseverance and peace. And that they will get a sense that they can do anything, even with their brokenness. You see, my heart's desire is for Restored to reconnect people with themselves, with others, and with God. So in summary, life is hard, it's tough, it's brutal, because suffering is a universal experience. It's also glorious and wonderful because we have people in our lives that mean so much. We have great fun memories, we have adventures to pursue. But again, crisis will be what we experience from time to time. Trials test the consistency of our faith. But they can also be treasures in disguise. And many blessings are only found through suffering. So God calls us to persevere. Remember that joy is an intentional choice, not based on our circumstances, but on our relationship with God. God loves us, he delights in us, and he never forsakes us. And through that love, hope is ushered in and anchored on the assurance that his plans for you are good. Don't forget to remember what God has done for you in the past, to redeem, to rescue you, and to restore you. And he will do it again and again and again. He wants you to share your unique story with others, to inspire them and strengthen them and encourage others to be real and honest and authentic. Just to say what's on your heart and say, I'm not perfect, but neither are you, but I have persevered. That is encouragement coming from the lips of someone that they've been watching, because people watch when you're in your desert experiences. My friends, it's never, ever too late to be used by God. And God restores by reconnecting all of life's broken pieces so that you and I can experience full joy, indescribable hope, and immeasurable love. Thank you very much. I think we might have a little Q&A coming up.
Questions, comments? Don't be bashful.
I should say here.
Front row? Okay, good.
Karen, what do you have to ask me?
No, they won't hear the question.
So just listening to what you've gone through, and when you hit those moments that are difficult, and it's so encouraging how you say find joy and choose to find joy. How do you, like in that moment when you're struggling, do you just turn to the Bible, or like when you're in that moment and you're up against that wall, what helps you find that joy light and not just sit down and give up?
Absolutely. Great question, Karen, because that's reality. Grief is a real part of life, and it's fine and good and healthy to grieve. We need to grieve, because if we don't grieve and we go immediately into something else, that's unhealthy, and that's like stuffing. In the old days of the trash compactor, that's stuffing a brokenness. What I have found when something bad like that happens, I accept it for what it is. It's a crisis. It's something that's very hard, and it happens all the time, because there are things that happen from very heartbreaking to just disappointment. So what I do is I know, because of my faith, that God is working right then for my good. So that's very reassuring for me. But I also know that I am called to persevere. I'm called to be that warrior. I'm called not to back up and not to retreat, because that's the worst thing, because then you can get isolated and then you lose perspective. So for me, I take it. I understand that God has a plan and a purpose for me. And I understand that crisis and grief is a part of life. So it's not like it's unexpected. But what I know is that there is a plan and purpose in all of this. You know, it's interesting. When Bob was diagnosed, it took 3 weeks, because it was a very rare disease. And we walked out of the oncologist's office, and we were given 3 months, and we had a little 6-year-old boy. And my beloved said to me, he said, "Sweetie pie, I don't know if I have 3 weeks. I don't know if I have 3 years. I don't know if I have 30 years. But from this point forward, we're going to choose joy, and we're going to give the glory to God." And you know what happened? People watched. Lives were changed, because they saw that we were definitely in crisis. We were a family in crisis. And what people did is, number one, they were touched and they were moved, and they saw that all those times we had given glory to God, it meant something when we were really in the depths of despair. But it also did something else. It gave dear friends an opportunity to bless us, a family in crisis. And indeed they did. So when you are also in the dark places and those desert experiences, let other people help you. It's called community. And it's amazing when you know that there's a purpose And even though you might not see it then, or maybe might not ever see it until the other side of heaven, but you know that there's a purpose and that you can encourage others through that, there is power in that. And we saw people literally changed because of the strength we had going through it. Would we have chosen that? No, 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 no. I think that's why God has the 10 commandments, not the 10 suggestions, because we're just not strong enough. And that's not what we would have chosen, Karen. But if you know that God has your back and there's a purpose in everything, then there's a purpose. There's not a mistake that where you are right now, that God has you exactly where he intends you to be. And the last thing I will say about that is Bob had a lot of pain through this. And I learned how to massage Bob's back in the wee hours. We lived in the hospital quite a number of months. But one night, Bob, in the middle of the night, it was jet black, and I was massaging his back. He got up and he said, "Cindy, I found it. I found it." Now, I thought when he said, "I found it," that begs the question, what did you lose? And every night at midnight, we had to do some dressing changes because of where his surgery was. So I thought perhaps I did that every night. It took about an hour, that I had maybe not attached the tape, or there was a syringe that fell off. So I was looking under the pillows and the covers, and I said, "Honey, what did you lose? What did you lose?" And he grabbed me and said, "I found our ministry. Our ministry is to help other people." And we should feel so honored. We should feel so honored that God felt that we were capable of this ministry, that he felt that we were capable. And that just changed everything. It was at 2:00 in the morning. I thought, well, I wasn't quite expecting that. Maybe I just had to let the sun arise. But, it changed everything because we were really felt honored that of all people that we could take on this challenge. And we did, and people's lives were changed. So friends, you're exactly where God intends you to be, even when you are in those low times. And use it as a time to encourage other people and share your wounds and say how you are going through this, and how trials are treasures in disguise.
I'd like to say one thing relative to Karen's question. It's a lot easier to decide ahead of time what that thing that brings you joy is. Mm-hmm. So, and if it's a song, if it's reading the scriptures, whatever it is, if you know ahead of time what you're going to go to, it's a lot easier to choose that when you face that trial.
That's so true, Dick. And let me just say, in the book, I also say, you don't want to create your theology when you're in the middle of crisis. That's a big principle I have. You don't want to create your theology when you're in the middle of the crisis. You need it to be anchored so that when crisis comes, exactly to your point, my friend, that's well said, that it's strong.
The other thing, you mentioned giving service. And I don't know if anybody else in here knows, there's a website called justserve.org. You can go there, anybody can sign up. There's all sorts of things around our community where we can provide service. And so organizations that are looking for volunteers can list their service needs on justserve.org. It's open to everybody. It's not specific to any one organization. And if you're looking for things to do and serve in our community, justserve.org.
Oh, Dick, that is great information. Thank you. That is so helpful. There, to your point, grief in action is what I have found is a great way to be other-focused and not self-focused, and to create healing. Great point. Thank you for that. And if maybe we should, Tom, maybe what we could do is have you send out to people, what Dick said, that I'm sure you know about that. That's a great website. Thank you, Dick.
Is this on?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. You talked about community. And we've known each other, 38 years?
A long time, Doug. We sure have.
And I think, community a lot of times is showing up.
It is.
But it's a two-way street. That if you need something or someone, you kind of have to, you can't isolate, as you said earlier. And, I've experienced firsthand people, calling up and saying, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Come out of the shadows and let's have a cup of coffee or more, but community is a two-way street, and part of that is communication.
That's right.
So anyway.
That's so well said, Doug. And I want to add to what you said, because on my chapter on restoring community and restoring compassion, what I saw when Bob was sick, I saw people just do great things that were friends, but I wasn't expecting from those friends, because we had a lot of friends and we were very involved in the community, but I was surprised that some of our best friends didn't show up. I wasn't mad, I wasn't upset, we were just trying to survive, but I realized they thought that they had to say something that would be brilliant to take away my sorrow. They couldn't resurrect Bob. But to your point, to your great point, Doug, two things. It's really important when you see friends or that are hurting to show up and assign yourself. To assign yourself a responsibility. Like my dear friend Connie Yates brought these sodas by our home because it was the only thing that helped her sister Luann when she was going through cancer, breast cancer, that helped her with her nausea. So Connie assigned herself to bring Big Red to our home, thinking that would help that would help Bob. So we were blessed, and for Connie, who has such a gift of service, that was wonderful for Connie. But friends, when you have others that you know are hurting, assign yourself to do something. Don't wait to be asked, Doug, just like you said, because we were a family in crisis. We were trying to survive. I didn't have time to pick up the phone and say, Doug, could you bring this over? Connie, can you bring some Big Red or help us? Do it. And then show up. And sometimes you don't have to say anything. Just sit, be quiet, hold a hand, cry with that person, but show up. Well said, Doug. Well said.
Questions, comments, protests? Okay, back in the back.
That's my Connie.
Cindy, I was just thinking you might touch a little bit on any advice you have for people who have to comfort a small child like William was. He was so tiny. He was so little, only 6. Yes. And then he journeyed that with you.
Yes.
And, sadly, many of us are going to be comforting small children.
Great question, Connie. Great question. First of all, it was important for me to get William into grief recovery. And so for a year, we went to, it was the Gilda Radner home, and it was, and now it's where she had the red door, and we would go every Thursday night because William felt alone because he didn't know any other kid that had lost a parent. So he felt really isolated, and he felt different, and kids don't want to feel different. So we did some grief recovery, but William and I have always communicated very, very well. And what I did is I kept pictures of Bob in our home everywhere. So if you come to our home, you will think that I have a 6-year-old child, because I have kept pictures with Bob still all over the house. And now pictures of William and I as he's grown. He's 28 years old now, so I have current pictures. But I wanted him to be reminded. I didn't want to erase that memory. I didn't want to pretend that, and to sweep this under the rug, that this never happened. Kids are intuitive. And my mom, when she was sick, back in the 60s, nobody talked about sickness. And so she never told us that she was sick, my little sister and I, because she was a champion. And the only opponent she couldn't defeat was cancer. So I had these dreams. I would go to her and say, Mommy, are you going to die? I just had that intuitive feeling that something wasn't right. Kids are intuitive. So also what I did for years, I wrote little notes, love notes to William, and I'd always sign love, Mommy and Daddy. Because again, I wanted to keep that memory of Bob alive to William. And to this day, we talk about Bob. And it's really important to talk to your children. Again, age appropriate. William was a very kind of my old soul. He always had this intuitive wisdom. So it's very important, y'all, if there is a child in your life that's perhaps lost a parent, or perhaps their parents have gone through divorce, and you're close enough to talk to them. Again, age appropriate, because it's important to bring out. Kids have that. They need to discuss that, and they need to talk about it rather than just compress it, because it will come out. It will come out. So we talked a lot, Connie, about life and death. And again, he went to a classical Christian school, and we were very involved in our church. And the other thing is, when Bob was sick, we made a list of men that Bob wanted in William's life when he was gone, because it was a very terminal illness. We knew we only had a short amount of time. So what I did with Bob's, literally with me in participation, we had a list of men, coaches, fathers of some of William's classmates, and I asked them to help mentor William, because I was like a deer in headlights. So it was really important to have testosterone-laden men talk about things that were important as he grew up in his journey to manhood. So, and I also was fun, some fathers and sons in William's class had this curriculum called Journey to Manhood, and they invited William and me there. So I got to be part of the Journey to Manhood, but I read everything I could. As a matter of fact, they asked me to teach it. I mean, at the end, I think they just needed a little help and guidance. But so don't not talk to your children, or don't not discuss this, because kids need to see that crisis and heartbrokenness and pain is part of reality. Because otherwise, if you try and cover it up, God doesn't want that. He doesn't want us to hide the truth. Great question. And I spend a lot of time with children who are going through that as well, and families.
Questions, comments,
Protests.
protests. Okay, in the back front. While I'm going down there, I remember the day when you didn't tell children that the parent was dying. And I always thought that was odd. But that wasn't that long ago.
Mm-hmm. It's just important. It's important in our lives to not hold secrets. It's important to be transparent. It's important to be authentic. It's important to be honest. We need to be that way, whether it's on the hard things in life or the not so hard things. So yes, Tom, you're absolutely correct. Great questions.
Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Ernie.
I kind of cheated. I've read the book, and I've reread parts of it that are that are very important to me. I was first reading it on an airplane, and I was on page 66, and I had to stop because that page spoke to me. And then I as I was reading on that plane, and then on the return flight, and then on another plane. I don't know why I only read on airplanes, but for some reason that seems to be a time when I'm trapped and I can't do anything else. And I noticed that on several pages, it had applications to each member of my family. One of the things that I noticed about your discussion that we all know, but it was written down, is that life is full of chaos. And every person has to address that chaos in their life.
Yes.
And that chaos could be something as minuscule as, oh, I stubbed my toe this morning, to I lost a job, to I lost a family member, to anything in between. And my question is this, is after reading the brilliance of this book and then reading the good book, you know, and understanding it, just the, rather when we come across someone who is going through that chaos, whatever that chaos is, and rather than just saying, hey, you got to buy this book and you have to read it, which I think we should, But then what is the one thing that you would tell that person to spark them some interest, to give them hope so that they could further explore how to get past their chaos?
Great question, Ernie. Let's say that you don't know anything about that person because of Wipeout Kids Cancer. I've been to a lot of funerals of kids. 44 years, and Ernie, you're on the board and have been so involved, and your sweet Kelly. What I would say, and I say to moms who are grieving, once you pause and recollect, be other focused. It gets back to that, Ernie, is to not insulate, because that's when you internalize it. Oh, pity and bitterness and anger can really take root there. So it's to be other focused, because these moms who have children with cancer and their children don't survive, they have these chunks of time that they used to take the kids to get chemo infusions or go to the doctor. So all of a sudden, what are they going to do with that time? Of course, they have other children too, but it's to be other focused. So I would say the important thing is to understand that, number one, that God loves you, that there's nothing you did to incur the wrath of an angry God. Sometimes people, again, that was where I parked my heart. And a lot of people at age 12, and a lot of people think that. So just to encourage them and to be a friend. And I would say for all of us, we have people in our lives that we can be a friend to. And when we see friends going through hard times, assign yourself and be there. But again, to encourage them to, number one, to be other focused, to not get isolated. Even in marriages, they can get isolated because there's a lot of blaming, and there's a high divorce rate when there is a loss of a child with cancer, and probably other diseases too, because grief comes in all shapes and sizes. So again, I just be other focused and to get yourself involved in community and make sure you're around people, and also to have a community group. And when you feel sad, and to your point, at the end of all 7 chapters, I have applications on what to do, and like on choosing joy, applications on how do you do that? And many times it's having accountability partners or having community groups that spur you on, or writing and journaling, and be what are you grateful for? Or it could be just doing one thing per day, because many times in the chapter on restoring momentum, just putting one foot in front of the other, because life weighs so much, is really hard. So just in that case, just do one thing every day, and then chronicle that, and eventually you'll get into a routine that you can be more productive and kind of integrate back into life. Does that make sense?
It does, and thank you.
Thank you. Great question, Joel. Thank you.
We have time for a few more questions, comments, protests. Yes, sir.
What was significant to me in knowing Bob was he was fortunate, and that he seemed to have come to an understanding of Father God and a trust in him in a way which maybe Father did that because of what he had in store for Bob. Mm-hmm. It's taken me a few more decades. Mm-hmm. But I can remember the peace,
Yes.
the serenity.
Yes.
And you have to understand this, the joy that was set before him. There was sadness, and Cindy's spoken to some of that, but because of the depth of relationship, a father gave him the strength to walk out the end of his days.
Yes.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want or lack for anything. Cindy has Psalms 23:3 as one of the key verses in her book. when Bob took Psalm 115:3 and said, "But our God is in heaven, he does whatever he pleases."
He does
He
right
did-
well.
He didn't, and he does right well. He didn't question those sorts of things. And to an earlier question, in Nehemiah it says, "For the joy of the Lord is our strength." Bob exemplified that. Obviously, both Cindy and Will have been beneficiaries of the life they've watched right to the end as a result. But I would just say, I've come to a point, thank the Lord, where looking forward to the end is a joy. Really, to a certain extent, you can't wait. But you have to start out at the right points in order to have that sort of hope and confidence. And thank you for speaking to that. Bob had started at the right point. Therefore, he went out with joy.
Thank you, Dan. That's beautiful. Thank you. And again, to your point and to Doug's point, to really what we're saying is you cannot, in a crisis, create your theology. It's got to be anchored strong, because when those winds and storms hit, you've got to know that you know where you stand with God. And if you believe that he is who he says he is, then that gives you the confidence, Ernie, to answer your wonderful question to move forward with victory, no matter what. So great comments. Thank you, Dan. That was beautiful.
One last question, comment, protest.
Hey, Cindy, thanks so much for coming out here. I think everybody's really enjoyed this
Thank
program. Quick question. So besides your mom, who was really your top kind of mentors growing up? And can you just share some about them, or maybe some things that they told you that have kind of stuck with you all these years?
Great question, because it is important. I'm so glad you brought that up again. That's what we did with William, is to get those mentors in his life. My dad was a great source of joy for me, even though he was dealing with this great loss. That was a really hard heartbreak for him. I also had a grandmother. Our grandmothers kind of raised us. After Mom's passing, my sister was 10, I was 12. And one was kind of assigned to Brenda, my sister, and one was assigned to me. And I was very fortunate the one assigned to me had a real strong faith. And I had a great circle of friends. One is here today, Sharon Davis, who since third grade, we were best friends. And so I had a great group of community, because they were my girlfriends, and I would go and stay at their house, and we had just wonderful times. So it helped my heartbreak, and it healed me. And then as I've gotten older, when I came back from college, there was a lady who I just really admired, and she mentored me, and we went through Titus, which is in the Bible. It's about the older teaching the younger, and she was a great mentor to me. And so I do believe in mentors, and I played tennis competitively. So my mom did not want me to play, but she did know that if that's something I'd love, because of following the footsteps of a famous parent. So when I was playing tennis, there were some mothers of some of the players who really walked alongside me when I was at the tournaments, and they would watch my matches even when their daughters were playing. So I was very fortunate to have that. But it is so important. You're so right. Mentors are everything, because we need to have older teach the younger. Great question.
I'm going to ask the last question, comment rather. As I understand it, I mean, you played competitively in tennis in college, and you were professional outside of college, and you decided that your service to the world was not through tennis, but through serving others who suffer from cancer and so forth. Can you comment on that?
Yes, after I did play junior tennis, and I did well there, and I went to University of Virginia, and I played number one on the team for 4 years, and then I did played a little professional tennis, but if you blinked, you would have missed my career. So I realized that wasn't quite for me. And so now I'm involved with my mom's tennis foundation. It's called the Maureen Conley Brinker Tennis Foundation. And we have tournaments for the elite, gifted, and talented young players from ages 8 to 12 is our sweet spot. And many of the pros that are in the late teens or early 20s are played in our Little Mo tournaments, like Coco Gauff. She won our tournament when she was 8, and she still says that it was at the Little Mo. We call it the Little Mo because that was Mom's nickname that she first believed. But Tom, to answer your question, again, I found that for me, great joy and healing came with giving back. And because cancer had assaulted my family and had been such a scourge of a disease, that's what I wanted to give back to. So I've kind of made I've worked my entire life with a professional job, but in the non-working moments, I really wanted to give back to kids with cancer and their families. But you know what's amazing? When I'm with these little kids who are young with cancer, bald heads, smiles on their face, I wonder who's the adult and who's the child. I'm not the adult. They are my heroes because I learned so much from them, watching them have joy. In spite of their circumstances, they choose joy. So there's such a great blessing when you give back. And so that's what I've loved to do, is to give back.